Good morning. Just a reminder before we begin, this transform assignment also is going to ask you to make a screencast. So remember, you're supposed to be in QuickTime Player with File, new screen recording option. Doesn't let me do it because I'm actually recording right now. But I detailed all this in the previous video, so just wanted to remind you here before you began, not to forget. The goal here is to perform a free transform on 4 different images of your own that you've taken. You should have a bunch of photos by now in Lightroom. If you're the kind of person that deletes every photo except for the ones you use, you're not doing it right. So I recommend just keeping all of them. But I digress. Let me show you how to select 4 photos in Lightroom. So I want to select for my kids here, but I want to select non-continuous photos. So like if you want to select 1, 2, 3, 4, you can hold on the Shift key, and it will select not only the photo you clicked on, but also all the ones in between. But I just want to select like this one, but also funny faces, funny faces. This one too, but I don't want to select all the ones in between. So I'm going to hold down the Command key while I click on the second photo. So now I have 2 photos, it says here, 2 selected. I'm going to keep going. I have another child somewhere in here. I do know I wanted to use this Lucky Charms photo. And then, yeah, you can see I did like kind of a lot here. I'm going to hold down the Command key and select this last photo. So I have 4 photos selected, and I did that by holding down the Command key and left clicking on each one. Once you've selected those 4, you're going to right click on one of them. And this is a new thing here. Previously we've done edit in and then edit in Photoshop CC. But what's going to blow your mind is just hidden below here is the open as layers option in Photoshop. So when we do that, this is going to, this version of Lightroom may require, etc., to say open anyway. Rather than having to like drag your layers into the different photos, this is just going to open Photoshop up. Of course, I was working on this earlier, and you might experience this. Yeah, there we go. That was a frame from a movie. Let's see. Cancel. There we go. There we go. So it's going to kind of like go through these actions, and you have to kind of let it go. It's going to seem like it's kind of stalling for a little bit. But now you can see I've got 4 pictures in 4 layers in one document here. And all the other tabs are closed. So I had this other shot. This is from a movie that we'll end up watching. But yeah, I didn't have to do any of this work here. And if I click on the eyeballs, you can see the layer order. A reminder how to adjust your layers, the order of them. You can click and drag them up or down. And where you see that line pop up is where it will end up. Okay. Now I'm just going to actually begin by hitting the F13 key on my keyboard. So if you don't know what the F13 key does, you need to stop right now and go back to the video about actions. You need that F13 key. So there's a video, an assignment called Actions in Photoshop. Go watch that. Watch what happens. F13 is going to resize my image here. Awesome. That's because we're about to make this 4 times bigger, and your computers are kind of old and slow. From here, if your image looks really small like mine, you just click on the zoom tool and zoom in a couple times. Let's see. Wow. My zoom tool is not working right now. That's okay. Command plus also zooms in. Okay, I had some weird technical problems, and if you ever have that happen, usually a matter of restarting Photoshop is usually the solution. That's what I did. Okay, here we go. So I need to make the crop size bigger, and to do that, we're going to use the crop tool, and just kind of give us a lot more space here, this way. because I'm working with about 4 photos, I want to make sure that this little center mark here extends beyond this corner. That means I can fit at least 4 photos in here. I'm going to hit return. I'm going to zoom out, Command minus. And now I'm going to use the move tool, so the first tool here, and just start like separating these guys. Okay, so we are going to do 4 different kinds of transforms. Look how nice that lines up right there. Oh, so cute. Okay, so here we go. The first transform, and what I mean by that, we are going to use the free transform tool to transform this image here. I've got it selected in the layers here. If you look under the edit menu and choose free transform, I highly recommend you remember this keyboard shortcut, Command T. That gives you bounding boxes around your image. Let me show you what they do. If I grab this corner here, it is going to squash my picture. I have snap turned on, so it's kind of like snapping. That's what this purple line is. That's okay. I can squash it there. I can squash it here if I want to. So the reason why it's called free transform is I am free to kind of do whatever I want to this thing. So for this first image, and I don't care where on the canvas it is, I want you to squash your normally rectangular image into a square shape, like so. That's going to make things look a little funky. That's okay. That's what I'm asking you to do. So I'm going to hit return, and that sets that image. Now it's a square. Okay, let's move on to the Lucky Charms photo. So for this second one, my notes here are, let's see. We are going to rotate this image 20 degrees to the left, counterclockwise. To do that, we're going to invoke the keyboard shortcut, Command T. Okay, there we go. Now, to rotate, I'm just going to take my cursor, and instead of going on this corner here, I'm going to go away from it, and now I have a rotate button. And when I click and drag it, it tells me the degrees that it's rotating. So if I go left, it's negative. If I go right, it's positive. I'm going to turn this negative 20 degrees, roughly. Sometimes it's hard to get exact. Boom. Okay, got it. Nice. So squashed and negative 20 degrees. Now, if I want to try and like do something down here to these other photos, I can't because Photoshop still thinks I want to transform this. So we always have to hit return after we've made our transformation. Okay. Next thing we're going to do is rotate the photo 90 degrees clockwise. We're going to move on to this lower left photo of my son Arlo. We're going to rotate this clockwise, exactly 90 degrees. So Command T. And again, bring the cursor away from the picture. Get the rotate icon here. And then when I rotate, this time I want you to hold down the Shift key. So right now I'm not holding on the Shift key. It's rotating freely. But when I hold down the Shift key, it will snap to 15-degree increments. So it goes from 50 to 30 to 60 to 75, etc., all the way to 90. It's up to you. Do you want to rotate it 90 degrees to the left? 90 degrees to the right? I think for this one, I'm going to do it this way so that he's kind of facing the other photos. And then maybe move it in here. I'm not really concerned how you arrange this, but maybe, I don't know, experiment with how they're laid out. Once you're done rotating it, hit return. And then the last thing I want you to do is resize this without squashing it. So the last one, you're going to make it actually kind of small. So to do that, we're going to, again, invoke the keyboard command, Command T, free transform. And when you resize it, you're just going to click and drag this to make it smaller. But notice I can squash and stretch it. I don't want to do that for this image, so I'm going to hold down the Shift key. That will lock it in that same ratio. And we're going to make this one really small. I mean, something like that, like a little thumbnail. Hit return when you're done. There we go. So now I've got kind of this interesting composition of different crops here. I've hidden this one of my son back here. Let's bring him to the top. So that's this thumbnail here. I'm going to click and drag the order of these layers so that now it appears on top. I'm going to go ahead and crop the image a little tighter, like so, like so. The last thing I want to do, hit return, is I need to drop a solid color in the background. So to do that, we're going to make a new layer by coming down here to the lower right hand side of the layers window. Click on new layer. Drag this layer all the way down to the bottom, layer 1. And now I'm going to tell you about the paint bucket tool. Paint bucket tool is likely hidden behind your gradient tool right here. So there's a little rectangle that has a gradient on it from black to white. Click and hold, left click and hold on this. Choose paint bucket tool. And I want to do a solid white color. So a lot of ways to kind of, you need to make the foreground color solid white. You can't tell maybe, but mine is a little bit gray. A quick way, I think if your color window is open right here, you can just click and drag this color up to white, and it will change it to white. Another quick way to make your foreground and background colors like black and white is to hit the D key on your keyboard. D is in dog. That will set the default black foreground, white background. Once you have those, then you can hit the arrows here to switch the foreground and background colors. So that's the quickest way to kind of get to white. You could also use X to swap these two things, right? So D and then X will get you to white very quickly in Photoshop. Now on layer 1, I'm just going to click, and that gets rid of all those checkers. To turn it in, if I look at my image size, 1900 pixels, too big, right? So we're going to hit F13 to resize this guy. File, save as. There we go. If yours looks like this, likely, I'm going to call this Chris Zebarth dash free transform. Save it. I'm going to click on this arrow here so I can see the whole thing here. I'm going to put it in on my desktop. On my desktop, I've created a folder called Finished. This is kind of where I'm turning stuff in, so I'm going to save it in this folder. Under Format, choose JPEG, Original JPEG. Click Save, Quality 10, and there you go. You have free transformed. And now that you've done all that work, you can come up to the Stop button here, right, which is going to stop your screencast. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed. Goodbye.